Good.
And there's a number of larger municipalities who have a lot of formalized programs of which they've implemented for purposes of affordable housing, some of which utilize TID extension funds, some that do not. But we haven't found municipalities our size that have used their funds perhaps in the manner of which we'd like to. So we're continuing that journey and have also had the opportunity to meet now a couple of times with Milwaukee County and also a nonprofit consortium that's been put together to address affordable housing in Milwaukee County. So that's been one portion of the work that we've been doing. A second portion has been listening. Since the approval of extension of TID 1, there's been a great diversity of viewpoints in terms of how the funds should be used. And as we continue to listen, it became apparent that I think that we need to step back for a second. Because when we talk about it, people, when the vote happened, people heard affordable housing, people were supportive of it. But I think people have different definitions for what that means. So I think the CDA will need to do some education of our members in terms of what options are available in order to be able to be geared to make the best decisions that you can for purposes of the community. Reflecting on that, we are suggesting that when you do this education, you do it with the community as a whole. Because while you're the group who has been chartered to foster the process, there are a lot of people within the community who have interest in the work that you're doing and who would also value from learning more about what tools there are and how it impacts the community, and then also the larger picture of Milwaukee County. Shorewood's a very small portion of an affordable housing issue that's countywide. So I think we would benefit in terms of getting some of that perspective and then sharing it as we go through the process. With that, I'd be recommending that over the next 30 days, now that we've solidified chair and vice chair, we put together some options for the CDA to review and consider for an educational format in July.
So just for purposes of the conversation, a couple things. I think the first point Rebecca brought up is, what we're, as we're, the first point was to look out and see who else has done this before, who's ahead of us that we can learn from. And in most cases, those are larger communities that have significant staff around housing and around those kinds of things that can support a program of the, certain scale and scope. So we don't have that, which I guess certainly we need to factor that in. I think one point to me is that I think for the CDA, I think it means we are all going to have to up our game a little bit. I think we rely on staff a lot to do a lot of work. And I think if we're going to do this right and get to where we want to go, I think we are going to, some of that work needs to fall onto us to actually be doing some research and interviewing and conversations and thinking. Not that we don't do that, but I just feel like we're going to be maybe a little bit more hands-on in some of this. And so I'm hopeful the rest of the CDA is on board with doing that. Again, you volunteer your time already, and I think we're going to be asking you to maybe volunteer a little bit more of your time or your headspace and your smarts to help us get to a good place. I guess the other thing is, again, as Rebecca said, this is, I think, an opportunity. There's been a lot of conversations about development, about housing, about all of this in the community. I think that's all good. I think this is a moment in time that allows us to do that education, to remind the community or inform the community, what the CDA does, what the various entities within the village do, and to just start this off from a very transparent. We've talked about transparency a lot. We're trying to be transparent. And so this is, I think, the start where we can do some education and we can have conversations and dialogue with the community about this. So so that moving forward, we are, as much on the same page as possible. This is, the CDA is, I would say, leading this effort, but in my mind, this is a village-wide effort, right? This is a big thing we're trying to do here. And it can't just be a CDA thing. It can't just be a village board. I feel like we're going to want to get more parties involved and have their voices, voices heard, so that, again, our solution, I think, is well accepted in the community. And again, to Rebecca's point, one of the challenges here is everybody has a picture in their own mind of what affordable housing means. I mean, just in the village board meeting where they talked about it, I don't know if anybody had a chance to listen, but you've got the aging in place sort of group, you've got special needs group, you've got the equity questions. So I get, there are multiple components to this, and people have views on it. And so we are not going to be able to address all needs for all people. And we're going to have to, I think, narrow some of that down to who is the market that we're trying to serve on this, and this isn't the only, there are other TIDs that will be closing in the future that will free up more money. So in concept, this could be a multi-year thing, but whatever we come up with, it's not going to be a solution for everybody. It's going to be a little more targeted. So those are just my thoughts for the CDA. Kathy, I saw that you had your hand raised. I don't know if you had a question.
Yes, thank you. So to Rebecca's first point, this is just maybe informational for me, because we can't increase our staff size to manage this. Are there other communities? Are we going to can we take legally part of the money out and use it to manage the affordable housing? So can we take a certain amount every year and say, this is going for operations, meaning, I don't know, like validating the income levels, things like that. So, I mean, where some of the money may not actually go to help someone,
right,
subsidize an apartment, but it might have to go to an office worker to make the phone calls to verify the W-2, that kind of thing. Is that a possibility for us as we look at the options available to us to spend some of the TID money legally? There's no problem with that, is there? Does anybody know?
So I think that that's something that we could explore with whatever type of program we would have in place. As I've been reviewing other programs, I've been working from a perspective that we wouldn't want to, I wanted to focus to get the funds in the hands of those who needed them versus spending that on administration of the project.
Of
But
course,
I think as we go
that's
on,
the goal. That's the goal, but I think we have to be realistic here. We
Yeah.
cannot
very
add.
valid point, Kathy. Yeah. So I think what would happen in that case is that we would just want our legal counsel supporting that decision in conjunction with the statute. But yes, there have been programs who have utilized it for purposes of administration.
So that's not an unusual route.
No.
Okay. All right. And the other thing I was wondering, so I think that's great if we can, by July have the education plan. If we kind of want, sometimes they work a problem backwards. So like, what is my deadline? And work it back. How much do I need to accomplish by a certain time? By extending the TID, do we know how much money we're going to get and on what day, and legally what are our requirements for having something accomplished with that money? Just from my own point of view, I'd like to know what, and then that's where I would kind of maybe fill it in from the other direction, perhaps.
So we do know what those we will when the TID closes with its forecast. We have estimates at this time, so it's just a matter of fine tuning that. But there's no deadline in which the funds need to be used. So there are some smaller communities who extended their TID years ago, and things happened or boards changed, COVID happened, and they just haven't gotten back to it. So there is no deadline restriction. As a support for the CDA, I think what's more important for this group will be the process that you use and being comfortable with that process and how you move through your work with the community.
And so are we thinking like some forums, obviously?
One
Or town
concept,
hall meetings or something?
one concept that has been talked about, and we recently used it with the historic educational series, is potentially bringing in guest speakers to talk about the work that they do, to allow people to understand and to bring that to the CDA, but allow the community to hear that same presentation. I mean, all of our meetings are open to the public, but I think what was great about the historic education series is that the meetings would occur. People, other members could be on there, and there was an availability for some Q&A at the end. But then all of them were recorded and posted online, so that at any point in time, if you have interest in this, because people's schedules are busy, not everyone, is always available, to come. And so we posted them online, and I've been, on the historic education series, I've been surprised at how many people continue to go back to the videos. And I think that's also a good toolbox for, if the CDA member or composition changes. We don't want to lose the work that we've done. And sometimes it takes time to go through all of those options to understand the journey that you guys as a group have been on.
Rebecca, I'm just on Kathy's point. It's such a good point. I feel like, we can't put together a project plan, obviously, but I feel like maybe, and again, I'm happy to work with staff. Maybe it's just a really high level, kind of big chunks, right? And I don't even think we need timing on that at this point. We could probably add that, but just sort of, because in my own mind, I keep sort of going through, what does this actually look like? What are the big steps? And I agree, the training and community conversation is certainly important and is certainly on the earlier side of it. So I agree with that. But it'd be helpful for me, I think, if we just had, as Kathy said, that end state is okay. I don't know what that end state is. Is it we've approved an affordable housing development or something, and then working back from there, kind of high level, how do we get there again? Because I don't have the path. I don't have any level of path in my mind as to how that would work. And that's, I think, just my own trying to work through what that looks like. So I think that might be helpful for the CDA, again, just to start talking through, how do we see this process working?
Yeah, and I guess one of my big questions is existing versus new, development versus working with something that's already perhaps in place. And is that a reasonable distinction to make? I don't know.
I think that's good. And to that point, I was, not to be the total pragmatist here, but if we had a goal in mind of a certain percentage of our, do we have something like that? Like if we put in, or just throw it out there to say 5% of our housing stock should be affordable housing, then how do we accomplish that? Can we develop enough to create that? Or would we have to convert? Because, the community conversations, as much as I enjoy them, it was like when the question was asked, do we want affordable housing? Everyone says yes. And then when you get into the mechanics of how that happens.
Yeah, but what does it mean? What is
yeah,
that?
we give a grant to a billionaire.
Lots of affordable housing,
Yeah, so can we develop 3,000 new affordable housing units, or do we have to convert them? And is that even feasible? Because I think if people are presented with that question, they'll feel differently about it. Does the village need to buy 3,000 housing units and subsidize them? Then, because that might be the only way to get to that goal. So I think just talking about it nebulously in space of goal, without a concrete idea of what is possible in mind or what the aim is difficult, and it's going to cause fraught conversations.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
I was thinking along the same lines because we've done 2 years of education so far, I believe, roughly. From when we started the study, right? So we did, I believe we started the housing study 2 years ago. Am I about right?
Sounds about right, yeah.
And that provided a lot of good data and some information. But I too have the question of, what are we educating ourselves on? Are we going back and re-educating ourselves on what we know, or are we trying to learn new things? And are we trying to get some sort of, when we say education, are we trying to get community consensus? Rebecca, I mean, is that what you mean?
Well, I think there is another group, the only other group who I'm aware of at this time, who is going through a similar endeavor in Milwaukee County. And I think they would be the person who's leading their effort. I think would be helpful to hear where they've started, and to Peter's point, to kind of explain the roadmap that they've been on.
Yeah.
They've been working now for about 1.5 years.
And
And have just,
Who is that?
I apologize. I'll have to bring
It's
up the PowerPoint. I don't have the name. It's a consortium of nonprofits who identified the specific groups that they were looking to serve for affordable housing in Milwaukee County. And then now that they've identified the groups that they're intending to serve, now they're going back to look at tools available and how to go about doing it. It took them about 1.5 years to get to their goal, or to identify what the groups were. And so do I think it will take that long? I'm not sure, but I think it's helpful to listen to a group who's doing it on a countywide level to understand what that process could be like. We can bring you examples of what we think may work, and we can talk about that in July. But I think it'd be helpful to learn from some others who have gone down the pathway before.
Yeah, because I mean, when I think about our village and the surrounding area, it does seem like on some level it should be a regional effort rather than a village effort, because
Right.
we have so little developable space, to Joe's point. Like, so we can build 50, even if we built a 50-unit apartment complex and everything was Section 8 in that, that's a drop in the bucket, for what we're doing. And that's, in my mind, that's what's realistic in this village. I mean, I don't see us in the next 5 years building hundreds of affordable housing units or even converting them. So,
well, and in retrospect, we have a very small amount of funds.
Right.
So, I mean, I know that 2.1 million sounds like a lot.
And that was going to be my next point, is I think everyone, including, we need to make sure that the community understands that very point. We have to keep the scope of this in mind and not spend an inappropriate amount of time on this particular one issue based on what we can actually accomplish, I guess is the way I would describe it. So, Rebecca, to your point, $2-point-something million. Yeah, it's a lot of money to me. It's a lot of money to a lot of people, but in the grand scheme of real estate development, it is nothing, very little.
Yeah, but I guess, well, sorry, John, finish.
Well, and so I think that, to me, that should be a big part of the education process, is to say, all right, staff time, our time, everyone's time, this is something we need to do, but there's also other things to do and other things in the village to get accomplished. And, I would hate to see us, do a lot of education and spend all this time, and we just don't really have the ability to enact much in the next few years with the funds even that we have available. I'm not saying we shouldn't pursue it. That is not at all what I'm saying. It's just, I think we all need to keep that in mind, and especially just make sure that the general public knows that this is not something everyone's going to be spending hundreds of hours on, you know, trying to figure out over the next 6 months. Like this is, we have to keep it in perspective.
I'd like to add to that. I'd be curious to see if we did set a hypothetical of 5% or 10%, how many units that is and what that 2.1 million amounts to. Are we talking $1,500 per unit, or are we talking, you know, 100,000? I mean, what, it can't be 100,000. So what realistically, what can we buy per unit? What is our budget? That would be meaningful data for me to have. I mean, I get what, to John's point, what can we actually, like, if we just go 100% of that money, 100% subsidy for existing stock, what would that actually look like? What is the delta between what the affordable community can afford and what the asking rates are? And would that buy us a year of affordable housing, or is it buy us 20? And then, you know, that's helpful to be able to, when in our discussions with the community, to be able to say, you got to understand, we're talking, it's $2 million, sounds like a lot of money, but really you're talking about $10 a unit or something. I don't know, you know, like that helps me when I have these discussions, because it takes it out of the ether and puts it, you know, in concrete terms.
Kathy, were you going to say something?
Chair Hammond, I was going to say something. It's Jessica. Hi.
Hi.
You know, I also think that we need to make sure that we are looking creatively. And I think Trustee Stokeran had sent me this article. It was in the New York Times probably about 6 months ago, about some different options. I think it was in Evanston, that they were doing to help, like, encourage home ownership rather than rental, and how they were subsidizing that. And to me, I think that is another option. You know, I don't know that there's a ton of rules that we have at the moment of how we do this. And so, you know, like, everyone's initial thought is subsidizing rental units, but I think, and Rebecca could correct me if I'm wrong, but have, you know, a lot of flexibility. And to me, I would love to be able to support someone who maybe wants to buy a home and wants to be invested in our community, and, you know, think about ways that we can do that. And yes, you know, to everyone's point, you know, the $2 million is not a lot of money, but, you know, that could, I'd rather be able to have a bigger impact than on fewer people than a smaller impact on more people. And I'm happy to share that article, but I have to dig for it. But I think, you know, also just really thinking creatively of ways that we can do stuff that makes sense for Shorewood, because I think the initial thought is, oh, just subsidizing units. Well, you know, that we may have some other options too. So I think that's important that we keep that sort of idea out there, that we have a lot of creativity available to us.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, Jessica. I agree with what everybody's saying. And I think that's, you know, this conversation we're having right now is the whole point of why we need to have the community conversations, because we'll get back to, everybody has a certain view of it, and we need to engage everybody to talk about everything we just talked about. What does it really look like for us to do this? And, you know, oftentimes we keep talking about transparency. I know obviously many organizations do. Part of the challenge of that is, you know, when we get to certain points of decisions, it makes sense to us, but if we haven't engaged people in that process that got us to that point, then it doesn't make sense to them. And so, you know, bringing in the community early on because this is all new territory for us, right? This is not our standard CDA work. We don't have a book that we can go turn to and just sort of follow the rules. So we are creating as we're going. And I think having the community in there with us as we go through that process to make these decisions. Is it a target, to Joe's point? Are we setting a target? Is it just the $2 million we're talking about? Or are we saying, look, we've gotten direction from the village board that this is a strategic, this is important to the board. We've gotten overwhelming communication from the community that affordable housing is important. So this is a strategic, if you ask me, this is a strategic initiative of the village. It's actually a strategic initiative, to John's point, of the whole region, right? Milwaukee they're beside themselves excited about the fact that we did this and we're now on a path. So I feel like there's both. I'm a little worried about jumping right into the weeds and just addressing the $2 million and just doing that. To me, there's a much bigger question here about, what are we doing about affordable housing? How does it affect our policies and our approach? And fine, we've got some money here too, but is it part of the fabric of Shorewood? And we're being told that people want it to be part of the fabric of Shorewood. It's what's going to keep or make Shorewood continue to be a diverse community, which is what we all want. So we've been tasked with figuring that out. And it's exceptionally complicated to figure this out. And so to me, the high level process, the early conversations, to be really honest with the community about how we're going to go about this. All of these questions are valid questions, and we are going to be grappling with them as we go through this in an honest, forthright, transparent, as having Shorewood, the best interests of Shorewood on our mind as we go through this. But so again, you've asked a ton of questions. We have no answers to any of those. And that's the process that I think we're going to go through to answer them and bring the community along with us. So we're going to have people that disagree. Absolutely, that always happens. But I feel like if people were involved in the conversation, their voice was heard. We only have little bits. We're a small community with a small staff and small money, so we can't change the world here in our little community. But I think we can take steps, and we can show a way to other communities about how to do this. That's what I really am kind of excited about is, this is heavy lifting. And if we can figure this out and really impact the community at whatever level it is, I feel like that's exciting. And that shows other communities, wow, okay, let's follow Shorewood's path in doing this. But it's more questions than answers right now. And that makes me a little uncomfortable because I like to see the path and I don't really see the path. So I think if we can get that high level and start to chunk it out for ourselves and grapple with that, and then start to dig in the conversations, I think that will help us. And reaching out to others that are ahead of us, whether they're bigger communities or not, I think that's all valuable information that we can take to be smarter about that. So sorry, that's a lot of words, but I'm excited about this. I think this is important. We are the housing authority for Shorewood. This is right down what we are supposed to be doing. But it's a big undertaking. Yeah, Kathy.
I wish I could find that article I sent Jessica. I just looked quickly and I can't find it. But anyway, I think that's a great point. So this does not have to be bricks and mortar. This could be a revolving loan fund, right?
Sure.
We could deal with like every bank in Shorewood, see who would work with us.
Guaranteeing loans or what,
Right. And so can someone explain to me our neighborhood loan program? What is that right now?
It's paused. There's nothing going on.
So, but there are there
are funds that are sitting. I'm going to totally sway. I think it's like somewhere between $250,000, $300,000. I feel like.
And just for background, was that an attempt to get affordable housing in Shorewood?
No, it was much more business oriented.
Oh,
it's obviously the business loan program. So we were providing loans to businesses to update their, the physical plant, or helping do that kind of stuff, purchase a building or upgrade a building.
I see. I, for some reason, associated neighborhood loan program with residential, but I think that the point we do have to, there are big discussions, but I would also favor getting into, getting into some specifics so that I can help get my head around all the, what's realistic for Shorewood, because we're high density. Well, that's debatable, I guess. Some of us think that we're high density already. We have high taxes, we have high home values, high demand for our homes. So that, I mean, we have to face the reality of what we are, right? We can't, like, we're not living in a different world. We're all built out. We're high demand, high taxes, high home values. How do you make affordable housing fit into our reality? You know, I mean, someone might say, wow, why don't you just, you know, there's a vacant lot in River West. Can you just give the money to River West so they can build affordable housing? I think legally, no, we can't. We have to do it in our boundary. Is that correct? We can't think big picture about the, I mean, we talk about the county because this is a regional, it's a national issue, but it's very specific also to Milwaukee as one of the most segregated areas in the country, right? But we can't just say, we feel bad about affordable housing. Our community's built out. We're going to take this money and just, you know, help subsidize something across the river. Am I correct? We can't do that. It's got to be in our boundary.
Correct. Yes.
I've already checked. We cannot annex part of Milwaukee near us because that's the easiest solution is to buy half of River West and just bring it into Shorewood, but it cannot be done.
Yes, Kathy, I mean, it has to be with, I believe it's within the district, the TID district itself, right? I mean, I think.
No, in the
Or is it beyond,
municipality.
it's all in the full municipality. Okay.
And so maybe instead of bricks and mortar, maybe the thing to do is think about, you know, something like a loan fund or something like that. And so that's part of the learning process.
Yeah, exactly. And again, yeah, sorry, Mike.
And if I can find that article, I'll send it to everybody, but.
Good.
Thank you.
I feel like it would be an embarrassment if we went out right now for a community education or listening session. I really feel like we, as the housing authority part for Shorewood, people will look to us to have some basic understanding, some options, some, you know, potential paths here, here, or here before we go out and then say to the public, here's what, you know, what we've investigated as your housing group. And now we want to have some discussions about, and at that point, we will know what's, you know, much more feasible and what the timeframes are. And I don't know, I just think we need to get pretty darn educated as quickly as we can. And I think talking to some of the groups that, you know, are ahead of us would be really helpful. But I just feel like we need some working sessions here that
I agree. I'm gonna volunteer my time to take a look at the money and just set, because the things I keep saying we should, I'll just do them, set a hypothetical goal and just sort of flesh out these numbers a little bit. I have a strong suspicion we're gonna have to use ours as a catalyst and try to bring in other monies from private donors, nonprofits, and look at ours, what percent ours could play in that role, like come up with a number. Let's say here's the number of housing units, and then what our number looks like and how much, what kind of multiplier of that we would need to affect both rental subsidies and purchasing or developing, to say we're 10% of the solution potentially, or, you know, just to put $1 per square foot number on things, because that's how developers look at things. And just an idea I had, I'm just want to, just as if we're spitballing, if there's a nonprofit we could help establish. One of the things, as I was thinking about barriers to home ownership, is any house you buy in Shorewood automatically, even if we guarantee loans, that loan payment plus taxes is going to be in excess of the median, the low income number we're trying to hit. So I don't know if it's even a mechanism, but one avenue potentially for home ownership would be if there was a nonprofit that would either pay the taxes, or if this village would grant nonprofit status to those individual homes for qualified applicants, that they would absolve them of tax payments. Because if you want people, low income people, excuse me, I'm not getting choked up, excuse me, to own in the village, the taxes are a big burden. So if we can find a way that they're absolved of those taxes, that's one step towards making it more affordable. But I will take the time and flush some things out for us to discuss at the next meeting.
Great.
So I think that I really appreciate hearing all of your discussion, because so many times, at least in the last 3 months, I feel like I've raised so many of the same questions. So what I do know is that this is the right group.
Good.
You guys are going to do a really great job together, and I think that you're going to be the best team that Shorewood needs at this time to help shepherd this project.
Chair Hammond, I just sent you the article. I found it, so
Awesome.
I just emailed it to you.
Thank you. John, were you going to say something?
Sorry. Yes, but it kind of was covered. I think I like the idea of us trying to, within our own group here, pull together some information about, almost like a one pager, like what is affordable housing? What are the 20 things that can be?
Right.
Because there's probably more than 20 of how
Yeah.
That in and of itself could be a really useful tool to educate us and the community at large to say, yeah, affordable housing isn't just Section 8 apartments. It isn't just this or that. It can be, reduce taxes for seniors who, are over a certain age. It can be all these things. And this is why it's complicated.
Yeah.
This is why it's not an easy thing that we can just say, oh, yeah, this is how we should spend the money, because, someone brought it up earlier, there are so many different factions, very good factions, I don't use that term negatively, in the village who think and have very good ideas of what this could be used for. And almost just listing those things out, I feel like that should be, and maybe we need a subgroup to just sort of put together this initial, okay, what are all the options? And then maybe even some examples, to Joe's point, of, within that, top 5 options, this is what it costs, or this is how this works, or just because even for me, I don't know. I don't know all of the options that are there. I would love to read some things. So if Rebecca or staff has some access to some online or even offline publications, even if they're a little wonky, like getting them out to us would be nice. Because I think that's got to be part of our education too, is reading, because I know I have not done too much in that department. And if anyone has information, I don't know what the rules are. Are there any rules about us sharing information offline like that? I don't think there are.
No.
We just have to
Subgroups are,
be,
we have to be careful about subgroups, because that's
Right.
That's an official meeting. So we just,
Right.
if there's
Maybe
more than
not if
2 of
there's a
you
quorum.
meeting at a time, you can't have more than 2 of you meeting at a time. If so, you'll be a negative quorum, and you would need to agendize a meeting with proper notice and in accordance with public meetings law.
But just sharing information, like if we share a link to an article online and everyone's reading that article, that's not an issue, right?
No, and what I'd propose is that maybe I just create a shared space, either through a Google platform or through Microsoft
please.
365.
that's a great idea.
Like a little of a receptacle for all this sort of these
Yep.
links, and yeah, that would be great. Because then
Yes, please.
because I
Yeah,
will.
so-
And I
go ahead,
really
Mike.
like the idea of that Joe brought up of, we don't have to be the sole, entity
Definitely.
that's creating this thing. Whatever it is, we could develop partners that stretch our dollars and stretch the number of people that can be served. And I think that
I think
is
that's a given. Yeah, I
a
agree.
really good
Yeah.
way to think about it.
Yeah,
There's money out there. My sister's doing a deal down in Evanston, Illinois, and she's got Goldman Sachs has a whole
Yeah.
wing, a whole department that this is their job. And a lot of corporations are now taking a harder look at this
Yes.
and deciding to put money behind it, not for-profit companies as well as nonprofits. So
Mhm.
that's almost where our money would be better spent, is catalyzing our small 2 million into something much greater, and or finding people from the village with those funds. I mean, someone made a very generous donation to the library. You know, there are people who still in this village have that kind of funding that could make meaningful contributions to this type of thing. And we have demonstrated with the vote that we're committed to the idea, and that's important. So I think taking that notion, as best that we can sell it, we want this, finding people who can help us solve the money problem would be.
Thanks for offering to make a donation, Joe. That's really considerate of you.
I said people with means.
Sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
So it makes me wonder, looking at like the role we could play, would it be wise to, like, I don't know, you look at the Milwaukee, Greater Milwaukee Committee, the Milwaukee Foundation, if we reached out to them and said, what are you thinking about doing something in the metro area in this, affordable housing? Could we dovetail with them? You know what I'm saying? If we don't want to add staff, but some of these larger groups are doing it, maybe we could say, would you think of doing your affordable housing project, whether it's a big bank, like, maybe it's Baird or, NML or somebody. NML's got a real estate division, right?
Yes.
Maybe could we be part of that, whereas they would take over the administration and we could just provide some seed money, but it would have to be in our village, right? That's the kicker, right?
Yeah. So, I guess we're obviously solutioning here a little bit before the project even starts. And I love that, because that's, the ideas are important. I feel like, again, there's the staging that needs to happen here before we get to the, what does it look like? And I think that's that first step. And, Mike, your point is really well taken about our education. Part of me says, I kind of want to take this is all new for all of us. This is all new for any community. This would be new. We're just not finding a lot of other communities that have done this, and there's a well-worn path that we can go to. There is to some degree, but a lot of this we are going to be creating as we go. And part of me says, I kind of want to bring the community along in that process. I agree. I don't want it to look like we don't know what we're talking about. Clearly, we can't have it that way. But at the same time, I think having the community see these discussions we're having, being part of it, I just think keeps people closer together, more on the same page, understanding the challenges, the issues, the reality of the situation through that whole process is going to be helpful to us when we finally come to what is it that we're actually proposing to do. So that's where I feel like maybe but just in general, communities have gotten a little bit challenged because they feel like they've got to do a bunch of work before starting to talk to the community, because they don't want to look like they don't know where they're talking about. But then by then, maybe some decisions have been made or things have been discussed, and the community is like, wait, we're not with you yet. How did you get there? We're not there yet. So I'm in my own mind trying to figure out how we keep everybody moving together in this process as much as we can. And again, this is challenging. I'm struggling with this. I know we all, again, we're all like, what does this look like? What is
right? Plus we're constrained by the open meetings requirements, right?
Yes, right.
So I wonder, I'm just speaking and thinking at the same time, my go-to thing is with COVID, we need to do a better website. What if if on our CDA tab on the village website, we had CDA reading list, and you and I or anybody in the community can go and see, here's what the CDA is reading. Here's the materials they're looking at before their next meeting. It's just an idea. We've decided, we're going to have something besides our minutes, aren't we?
Yeah, yes.
I just think we're going to have
yes.
to go online with some of this for transparency and accountability. People are going to want to say, what are you reading? Where are you in the process? And maybe I could say, well, the CDA tab has been updated. This is our reading list, and we can't only, we can all tell each other what we're putting on the list. You can see it, you can sign in every day and see what's new on the reading list. But with the meeting requirements, we have to be careful.
Yep.
And that's for a good reason.
Okay.
And I think we could do the same thing with when we are meeting with a nonprofit that's doing it, you know, that that information could be there too. As we're gleaning and educating, we're also disseminating that gleaning and educating. But I do think meeting with that nonprofit would be really helpful soon.
Okay. So yeah, we can all see what's ahead of us. Again, I think the opportunity is really exciting. And we keep hearing from others, boy, we can't wait to see what you do, which is great. But, and you know, again, as a small, I know a smaller community creates challenges, but at the same time, I feel like smaller community also, I think makes it, you know, allows us to maybe come up with a solution that others might not be able to due to the complexity. So, you know, I think it could be a small step to show others a path, because that's what I see is, you know, a lot of communities want to do this and they just don't know the how. And we're going to have to figure out the how. And I think that's going to help others. And there's a lot of people that are wanting to help us. I think that are in that space and have information that they're more than willing to share with us to help us try to get to a good place. So anybody else have any comments on this really good discussion? Thank you, everybody. This is the way it's going to be going from, I think this is the way this project's going to be going for a while. So thanks everybody for your active input. All right.
Do we want to make like so Joe has generously offered to do some research. Is there any specific tasks, or Rebecca or Peter, you know, do you want to try to delegate something in it? Like, tell me how this is going to work. Because I clearly have a lot of reading to do myself. So like a reading list for me would be great. Even I don't even remember the articles I forwarded to people. That's a great start, right?
A summary of what you read would be
Yeah,
great help
right.
for me.
Clip notes from Kathy.
I don't have to read it.
Yeah, Kathy's clip notes. That's what we need.
I think this conversation has been great. I'd love an opportunity to categorize and kind of put in some buckets some of the comments that I've heard here today. And then I'd welcome the opportunity to review those again with Peter and President McKay, because the work is bigger than the CDA. We want to make sure that, you know, we're taking a look at it and then come back to the group with some concepts. So never fear, you will be engaged with work and reading to do. And I think the reading list is also a good place to start as well. So we'll reconnect with you.
Good.
And I took note of everyone who was volunteering.
That's officially recorded.
Yeah.
Okay. Last item 5 was just this is again for FYI for the CDA, the Q1 financial report. Again, Rebecca, I don't know if there's anything to call out
No,
here.
nothing of note.
Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest thing for you guys to tackle today was to know who your leaders were, and so that we could reconnect with our new members and chart out where we're going next. There is one matter of housekeeping. We typically meet on Friday mornings on the first Friday of the month, and the next time that happens, it is actually, I believe, July 2nd. And I know a lot of people
I'll be
are
gone.
out and about at that time. So I wanted to suggest that we look at perhaps deferring the meeting until the second Friday in July, if that would be more conducive to people's schedules.
So July.
That date would be July 9th.
I'm out of town, but if we're continuing to do virtual, I can certainly participate. So, or lead the meeting.
Or we could do July 16th, if that would be
No, the ninth, I mean, the ninth works. I can make that work. I get nervous about bumping things too far out. So
Okay,
I don't know if everybody can do that ninth.
Good for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
okay, good. I will send you a meeting invitation then for that date, and then you're going to be hearing from me in between.
And so then it might be a working group kind of thing that focuses on education.
I think we have a number of options for our next meeting, but I think that one of the things that was clear from listening to all of you today is that you want to start the education process. So I think that there's things that we can do before the meeting, and then at that meeting on July 9th, in addition to also kind of sharing an outline of what the work may look like.
And no pressure, but I'd love to hear a report from Mr. Lesage.
You got
Ooh.
it.
Kathy, I think that, I like that suggestion. So if people are doing work in the 30 days leading up to the meeting, we could also agendize report outs in terms of what work has been done by different members of the group.
I mean, that is an example of what I was talking about in the beginning where, I mean, Joe, I really appreciate you offering to do that.
I haven't done anything yet.
Yeah,
So
but yeah. But I mean, that's the kind of thing I think we as the CDA are going to have to be doing here is
yeah, I agree.
grabbing some of this and going out and doing some stuff and coming back to the group. It just, we can't have staff doing it. They have a billion other things they're working on. Granted, this is a high priority, but there's a lot of other stuff going on and we can't just come back on a monthly basis and sort of go, where are we now? Because before we know it, a year is going to be gone.
Yeah, or it would be nice if we had, well, let's just do it. And for what I have volunteered to do, that's right in my wheelhouse. So that's, I can do that easily. So I think maybe that's the best is what's in each of our wheelhouses. We should be amenable to just grabbing and going with and sharing. So
I love meetings, so I'm going to try to attend. If Rebecca, I'll connect with Rebecca about this consortium, and I'll try to make it a point to be at their meetings in the audience.
Yep.
For the consortium, I'm hoping to bring them to you. They've offered, I'm going to be attending, Shorewood was on their radar. I think from the perspective that Peter's right, when this was approved, I mean, the next day I got phone calls from other communities that were our size or smaller in the county saying, well, how are you going to do it? Right? Because our constraints are similar.
Yeah.
So if we want to encourage, and if we're going to attack this from a larger scale, the ante went up because it's not just about Shorewood. It's about how to work through this process to find some solutions that will be different for each of our communities based upon our housing stock and land use, but how we proceed. So they have offered to come, their executive director, and talk with our group. I'm thinking that a first place to start, however, would be reviewing with Milwaukee County their overall plan.
Yes.
Because it really does provide an umbrella. And this consortium's group feeds into the work that has been done and laid out from that platform. So,
and can we get a reading list from them? I mean, again, any of these communities you talked to that are ahead of us, they're going to have, how do we make ourselves as smart as possible, as quickly as possible? What did they do to get themselves up to speed? And we can just kind of piggyback off of that.
okay.
And I guess the other thing I have to remember, I'm so excited about this opportunity, but at the same time, I need to be careful about, we're going to need to manage expectations. I think we don't know what the final opportunity is going to look like, and it might be smaller than what we had hoped for, but it's the best we can do. And so if I'm sounding too positive, please call me out on that, because again, I think it's important to manage everybody's expectations that, again, we're not sure what this is going to look like, and it might not be the great thing that we're all hoping for, but it is a step in the right direction, and this is a long-term process. So that's just a note to myself to remember that. All right, any other housekeeping? Are we good? All right, 3 minutes late, sorry.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a great
guys.
weekend.
You too.